We are back with the EFL Championship this weekend, and we return in style with 3 games in a week, as we've so often become accustomed to at this stage of the year. And we begin it today by looking ahead to match week 10 and all 24 teams in action over 12 matches. We're going to go through, preview and predict all the games as always. Give us your score predictions in the comment section too. We always encourage it, and if you beat or match my overall score, you will get a shout out when we return on Sunday to look ahead to the midweek edition on match week 11. But before we go and do all of that, a couple of quick reminders and a slight disclaimer. I'm recording this slightly earlier on Tuesday because, for those of you who don't know, my main channel is for Football Manager, and that game is due out later this week. You can pre-order it now via the link in the description or right above for 22% off and to help support the channel. But more important than that, we've got to go and have a look back at match week 9, where I had a bit of a frustrating one in truth, because although I picked up 7 points and didn't do terribly, I got one of the Championship's favourite scorelines right. I was just a goal out in so many instances. I was looking brilliant after 60 or 70 minutes, but again, this season is delivering goals and we were seeing more and more towards the end of matches. So 7 points for me, the Derby Saints 1-1 draw at the perfect score, and Coventry winning by far more than we expected, which caught a lot of us out. But it does mean that a number of you were level with or beat my score last time around. So prior to the international break, let's have a look at who needs a shout out. Level with me on 7 are Nigel, Neil, Sven, Bobby, Etienne and Ojo, all regular players. Well done to you for joining me on 7. One above on 8 were Adam and Poppy, both of you finding some consistent form. 4 of you on 9, Mello, Brian, Swifty and Isaac, before 4 of you went into double figures. A return to form and consistency for Steve on 10, before Tony on 11, despite missing the Friday night game. And in joint top of the tree are 2 match week winners with 12 points apiece, Mitchell and Gordon, match week 9's winners in the EFL Championship predictions. With that out of the way though, let's go and look ahead to match week 10, starting on Friday night with, well, the same team that finished the last match week in style, because Ipswich Town travel to a Middlesbrough side that have lost top spot and lost their unbeaten record. A 1-0 defeat at Pompey, a disappointing one for them. The frustrating game after going behind relatively early, weren't able to create lots of chances. And it's something we have said for Borough this year. While they have won a lot of games, while they've been in a lot of games, defensively they've not let too many in. Just 6 conceded, the joint best in the Championship, but they've not had that ruthless cutting edge at all times. And again, it was another one where they struggled to create lots of chances, had the ball, but only 1 shot on target in the end. And while they did have the best chance of the game, they weren't able to create lots of openings. So a frustrating one for them after going behind, and 2 blanks in a row after the home draw against Stoke. Whereas for Ipswich, we're starting to see a little bit of that form we expected pre-season, aren't we? 3 wins in the last 4, all of them at home. Got that 1-1 draw at Bristol City, and then crucially, a big win in the East Anglian derby, where they've not been able to have great success over recent years. Again, Jaden Philogene looking a bit of a superstar, a wonderful goal he scored. Jack Clark and Menace off the bench. It's a very strong squad. And to be honest with you, in the end, they thoroughly deserve to win. So a much better performance from Ipswich, but they've had their troubles on the road this season. Struggled at Preston, struggled at Bristol City. They've had a few frustrating games. Obviously got very lucky with that one that was abandoned against Blackburn too. So I'm not sure where to go with this. I do think Borough will be fairly tight, fairly hard to beat, though I can see them giving one up on the counter. But you know what? I'm going to go against the grain here. People will probably think Ipswich getting back in form will find a way to win. I'm going to go for Borough to nick this one. I've not really got much to go on. I think a lot of people will go for a 1-1 draw, but I'm going to go for Borough to nick it by 2-1 on Friday night. Let's move to what is already looking like a big game at the bottom end of the table. In the early kickoff on Saturday, it is Oxford United versus Derby County. For Derby, yes, we got the perfect score. It is 3 Championship's favourite scorelines in a row. 1-1 draws against Wrexham, Charlton and Southampton. They just struggle to find that fluency, both defensively and in front of goal. It's been a little bit inconsistent across the board. Maybe not what we were expecting so far this year, but they have got some attacking players that are coming back to fitness and looking half decent. So not the end of the world just yet. For Oxford, got that big win away at Bristol City, but haven't looked like winning one since. Obviously struggling for goals in recent games after trying to be a bit more steady defensively. Prior to that, they were shipping plenty when they were scoring. The fact that they were ahead early against Watford and then gave away 2 goals on a stroke of half time. They turned what was a leading position into a disaster in a few minutes. And look, it's not the fact that really they just lost that game, where they did create some chances, as they did at Bristol City in a away game previous, but they're giving up so many shots at goal. They gave up nearly 30 to Watford, who remarkably then sacked their manager after, we'll talk about later. They just look like conceding a lot of the time. They're getting opened up at will, and that's the one thing under Gary Rowett, particularly at home, they weren't doing a lot last season. But after a couple of tough games, are they going to be able to find a way here? It's the sort of game that you feel Oxford have to win to have a chance. They're coming up against a side who aren't in great form, and a side that will look for space in behind. If Oxford don't give it to them, it could be an interesting game. I'm going to go for Oxford to win it. I'm not going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline. I'm going to go for Oxford by 2-1. We'll go for the same score again. I've got a feeling I'm making mistakes here. 2-1 Oxford. The second early kickoff is a London derby between QPR and Millwall. Two sides that have started reasonably well and are now right up in that playoff mix. It seems like a long time ago that QPR lost 7-1, doesn't it? Because since then, 6 unbeaten, some fantastic performances, not conceded more than 1 in a game, and this time went away to Bristol City and turned it around from 1-0 down, only gave up 1 shot on target. It wasn't a brilliant performance. They didn't create a huge amount, but they were ruthless. And again, we mentioned with Richard Kone, that's something they haven't had for a couple of years now. And while Bristol City did create some good chances against them, they weren't getting completely carved open at will. Yes, on another day, they wouldn't have won that game. It's a really good away result. And we're starting to see that high-energy Julian Stefan team. We're starting to see a side that are fighting hard. And that's something that a few weeks ago against Coventry was accused of not being there. So really good signs for QPR, who are up into 6th place. And then for Millwall, I just don't know what to say. I keep backing them to win at home. They keep letting me down. I finally say they'll drop points against West Brom. And they played them off the park. A 3-0 victory, a really good performance. Solid, efficient, created the best chances. Didn't create loads, but created the best chances of the match. Gave up the ball to West Brom. Had next to no threat on their goal for the most part of the game. It was classic Millwall, but with a more ruthless edge. And that's something that really annoys me after finally giving way to predicting the Millwall home wins. And despite the disaster against Coventry, that is the only game of their last 6 they've lost if you take away the penalty shootout to Palace. And it's also the only game in that 6 they've conceded more than 1. So signs that the old Millwall are back a bit, with QPR unbeaten in 6 as well. There's going to be a lot of people that are predicting them to win this game. I'm going against the grain again. I feel like that's going to be my theme of the day. I'm going for 2-1 yet again in this one. But I'm going for the away side, Millwall, to win by the odd goal. As we move on to 2 mid-table sides that have been far from thrilling in the last early kickoff, it is Southampton versus Swansea. We're starting to see a few more goals creeping into these teams' games, but Southampton a 1-1 draw at Derby. Again, a little disjointed, a little uninspiring. Adam Armstrong is looking a threat, but you have to say, for all of the balls Southampton had and for all of the general territory they had, they keep giving up chances on the counter-attack. Derby had the best chances of that match, and it's something that Southampton have looked vulnerable to against almost every opposition in the league this year. Something that does worry me. So I don't think we can be completely confident about them yet. However, for Swansea City, a tough day against Leicester. Another one that sort of went against the stats. They had by far the best chances in the game. They were actually probably the better side for large parts, but again, just gave up chances on the break, gave up poor goals, give one up from a set piece as well. And unfortunately, it led them to a 3-1 defeat at home to Leicester in a game that on another day, they probably could have won by a couple. So it's a very hard one to call this. They both started the season with very few goals in their games. Both have produced uninspiring performances at times, but you could argue Swansea have produced the odd good one on the road, as we saw against Blackburn. I'm not going to go for that here, though. I'm going to go for this to be an ugly home win, and I feel like that's what the Saints need. Just a couple of games where they pick up points despite not being brilliant. They've picked up 5 in the last 3. They haven't lost in any of them. I'm going to go for them to get an ugly 1-0 here. Southampton to nick it at home to Swansea. As we move on to the 8 remaining 3 p.m. kickoffs, beginning with Birmingham City versus Hull City. And actually, after a strong start to the season, Birmingham have fallen away a bit. We talked about my concerns earlier in the year. Will Chris Davis adapt tactically? We said it in the pre-season prediction show. I'm almost a little bit frustrated that I didn't trust my instincts there because they've looked really poor at times in recent weeks. A 1-1 draw away to Wrexham, yes, not a disastrous result, but playing Sheffield Wednesday and Wrexham picking up 2 points will feel disappointing at this stage. The performance wasn't brilliant, it wasn't a great game, but they did create the better chances on the counter again. It's something we're seeing a lot of this year. They didn't take them, no, and that's been a theme of Birmingham's season, not taking their best chances. So the ruthless edge not there. They're down into the bottom half now, and that's something they're going to need to address pretty soon. They're playing against one of the other pre-season relegation favourites who are picking up points in fairness. Not the most exciting whole game, but finally a clean sheet, which no one will have seen coming. Yes, Sheffield United again had more of the ball, the best chances and whatever against them. But Hull nicked the goal and then they fought hard to stay in the game. They defended pretty well at times and were able to cling on. And again, at this stage in those opening 10 games, it's about points. And for Hull, after so many entertaining games that they've ended up on the wrong side of or not getting the win from, to nick a 1-0 will be priceless for them there. I know the owner won't like it, but still a very good result. This game, I've got a feeling is going to be a thriller. Birmingham is whether they take chances or not. They've struggled with it at times. I'm not sure they'll deal with the counters or the set pieces too well. So I'm going to stick my neck on the line with this one. And I'm going to go for a bizarre score. At St Andrews, I'm going to go for 2 goals apiece this Saturday. As we approach the halfway mark with a game between, well, a newly promoted side and a relegation favourite. It is Charlton Athletic versus Sheffield Wednesday. Both had a very difficult weekend before the international break. Charlton, let's start with them. 2 second half goals succumbed them to defeat against Preston North End. They didn't manage a shot on target. They were poor going forward. They were pretty poor at the back. It's probably the weakest Charlton performance we've seen since they came up, certainly over a 90-minute period. And after a good run of form, it's a disappointing week for them with a draw against Derby and defeat against Preston. But home comforts return and they've been pretty solid at home this year and very good defensively too. For Sheffield Wednesday, it's the same thing we talked about, isn't it? When they stay in the games and when they're in there at half time and moving into the second half, they've got a chance. If they concede early, they fall apart because ultimately it's the team focusing on the next game then. They think we need to rest ourselves. And there's not a huge squad there. It's always a difficult situation. And Coventry are an excellent team. But they gave up so many chances. 5-0 in the end was almost a little bit lenient because Coventry had enough chances to get 7 or 8. Sheffield Wednesday didn't manage a shot on target. Had a few efforts from distance. Had a lot of corners and set pieces. But didn't really do a great deal to threaten the opposition goal. And in the end, as I say, it could have been more. So for this game, I have to predict a Charlton win. They've been really good at home this year. Sheffield Wednesday have surprised a few by being competitive, and they'll be delighted to still be above Sheffield United. But obviously their main focus is off the pitch at the moment. The protests continue. The situation drags on. I'm going to have to go to Charlton to win this. A stable club doing well, and they'll nick this by 2-0. Into the second half, and we focus on the side that, well, absolutely demolished Sheffield Wednesday. It is Coventry City versus Blackburn Rovers. What a week for Coventry before the break. 3-4 and 5-0 victories. Really good results, really good performances. And I know Sheffield Wednesday, maybe not the easiest one to judge the performance because of the lack of depth they've got in their squad at the minute and the situation off the pitch. But brilliant performances. It's 4 clean sheets in a row. They're picking up wins. They're picking up draws when they're struggling away from home. They're really finding form. For Blackburn Rovers, home games have been a problem. And against Stoke, they did get a point, but it wasn't a brilliant game. Yes, they'll probably be quite pleased to get a goal late on. Yes, they probably deserved it on a balance of play. It was a pretty even match. However, they've had some tough days this season. Generally, their away form had been pretty good until the Charlton one last time out, where they were beaten 3-0 very comfortably. But Coventry are just in such good form. You can't predict anything else. I do think Blackburn will carry a threat away from home. On the break, they've looked like scoring at times, and I think they will do in this one. But I'm going to go for Coventry to keep the winning run going, even if not the one of clean sheets. I'm going to go for the home side to win this one by 3-1 to stay top of the championship table. As we move down to a very interesting one next, it is the Liam Manning derby. And both sets of fans won't be particularly pleased with him at the minute. It is Norwich City versus Bristol City. For Bristol City, the famous inconsistency has returned. After 2 brilliant performances and wins, or 2 brilliant results and wins, I should say, it's been 4 pretty disastrous ones. Defeat at home to QPR was frustrating from 1-0 up, but only 1 shot on target. Can't have too many complaints, albeit did create a couple of golden opportunities to go 2-0 up in that match. As it was, gave away some poor goals defensively, conceded the only two on target against them. And it's the old criticism we used to have of Bristol City. Yes, they weren't as exciting to watch last season, but they were generally solid. You knew what you were going to get. This season, it seems to be back to the 1 week of brilliance, 1 week being terrible. And a defeat at home to QPR will be very frustrating. For Norwich, it's 5 without a win now. 3-1 defeat against Ipswich in the derby, and they were outplayed for the most part of it too. Started relatively brightly, but after that, it was complete Ipswich dominance. So a very disappointing day for them. Some really poor performances at home, which has been a bigger concern. The fact they've not won a home game this season, when it was such a stronghold for them before, is really going to be pressure for Liam Manning, because they're now down on 8 points. They could finish this weekend conceivably in and around the relegation zone. They need to pick up points quick, and whether they do in this one, I'm not so sure. Bristol City will know how Liam Manning's going to set up, and vice versa in fairness. But I'm going to go for the visitors to nick this one. Bristol City have exposed some poor defences this year, and I'll get them to do so here by 2-1 at Carrow Road. On to the two newest managers in the EFL Championship. The bottom place side, Sheffield United, against Javi Gracia's Watford. If you've missed the manager specials in the international break, they are up in the eye above. We talked in depth about the Javi Gracia reappointment at Watford. We also talked before about Chris Wilder, who has not had the dream start. 1 win in 4 so far for him. Defeat against Hull City after defeat against Southampton. Really frustrating day. And again, Sheffield United is a horrible combination. They didn't give up a lot of chances in that game, just like they didn't previously in some of the others. But they conceded a goal. They created quite a lot of chances, as they have in some of the others, and some good ones as well. Didn't take a chance. And as a result, another frustrating 1-0 defeat, despite improvement in the performances. And maybe that's the encouragement they have to take at the moment. Look, they're not winning. They're not scoring goals. They've scored 3 in 9 games, but they are creating chances and producing better performances than they were under Ruben Sellers. And that's something they've got to take as a solace. For Watford, we're here to discuss a new manager after 7 points in their last 9. They had a really good week, beat Hull and beat Oxford, got a draw away at Pompey, who are normally very good at home. Then Paulo Pezzolano was sacked and Javi Gracia returns. Now, I've discussed it in depth. I don't think it's the worst appointment. I think he's a good coach. But what really surprised me after that Oxford game is, yes, they gave up a few chances, but Watford looked really good going forwards. They produced some really good attacks. They produced some really nice patterns of play, and it was starting to look like it was coming together a little bit. I know there were murmurings, the players didn't like him and whatever else, but a really surprising one for me based on results, but perhaps not based on what's going on behind the scenes. But it's a new manager at Watford. It's a manager that's not quite settled down yet at Sheffield United, and I just can't bank on them to take chances. So I'm going to sit on the fence here. It's one of only 2 I've gone for this weekend. I'm going for the Championship's favourite scoreline of 1 goal apiece. 2 3 p.m.s to go, and we begin with 2 sides at opposite ends of the table. It is Stoke City in 5th against 18th place Wrexham, but both of them have drawn all of their last 3 games. Stoke 2-1-1s and a 0-0 against Borough. Wrexham 3-1-alls in a row, which, when you consider they've played Leicester and Birmingham in that time, is perhaps not the worst outcome based on the pre-season predictions of most. However, against Birmingham for Wrexham, it was a strange game where Birmingham had the best chances, but Wrexham generally were a little bit of a threat on the counter-attack. In the end, a point, not an unfair result for either, really. For Stoke away at Blackburn, it's a little bit strange. They've not quite continued that early season fluency, but it was about being defensively solid rather than scoring goals galore. Was a fair result, but they gave up a lot of chances, and that's something that Stoke hadn't done in previous weeks. Seems to be it's 0-0, 1-0 or 1-0 either way for Stoke games at the moment. A lot of people will go for a Championship's favourite scoreline here, and why wouldn't you after both have drawn 3 in a row? I've got a feeling Stoke might nick this. I'm going to go by 2-1. I think Wrexham will give up a chance or 2 on the counter. I'm going to, as a result, just edge Stoke City to nick this one. Our penultimate game and the final 3 p.m. kickoff is West Bromwich Albion against Preston North End, 7th v 4th, but differing weekends before the international break. For West Brom, a 3-0 defeat away at Millwall, where they had a lot of possession, but gave up some really good chances. Millwall deserved to win the game on a balance of play, had the best chances of the match. West Brom didn't create a huge amount, and it was possession for possession's sake. It was a bit of a concerning performance. And again, after a positive start under Ryan Mason, just starting to see a few flaws now, which is a little bit difficult for them to take. So after getting that 1-0 win away at Norwich, frustrating to have made it 3 defeats in 5, albeit away against Millwall and Borough are not going to define their season just yet. For Preston, it's an unbeaten run of 5. Yes, 3 of them were draws, but they've scored 2 in 3 of them. They beat Charlton very comfortably. It was a good performance. They kept patient and in the second half deserved to win. Maybe concerned that they weren't as ruthless with some of their chances as they could have been, but defensively solid. They've just become a really solid squad under Paul Heckingbottom. And after surviving last season, yes, they got dragged into it a bit after the FA Cup run where maybe complacency creeps in about their position. But at the moment, they look a solid championship team. I'm not sure they stay up in that top 6 battle, but they certainly won't be worrying about the bottom this year, which is something that in the last year they would have done. So I think a really good start for Preston. I'm not sure where to go with this one. I think I'm going to sit on the fence for the second time. The Championship's favourite scoreline, 1 goal apiece in the final 3 p.m. kickoff. And that just leaves us with the bizarre Saturday night game, which is Leicester City versus Portsmouth. For Leicester, a really good 3-1 win away from home against Swansea. But as we said a bit earlier on, does not tell the story of the game. Swansea had all of the best chances in that match. Yes, Leicester created some of their own. They were decent enough of a threat going forward, but defensively definitely some concerns. And on another day, they could have lost that game. However, they have made it 6 unbeaten. Yes, and after a run of 4 draws, good to get a win on the board as well. They're just plodding along nicely and they're keeping up there, having only lost 1 game this season. For Portsmouth, back to home form with a big 1-0 win against Middlesbrough. Really good to beat the side who were obviously top at the time. Not a great game, 1 shot on target apiece. Borough probably had a good chance to equalise, but let's be fair, it's a really good result. It's a much more solid defensive display than we'd seen in the previous matches where they were poor against Sheffield Wednesday and conceded 2 against both Watford and Ipswich. I think it'll be another team that are just delighted to get a clean sheet. Where we go with this one, I'm not sure because we know Pompey are generally pretty poor on the road. Leicester City don't tend to take their chances. So where do you go? I'm going to back that more ruthless edge we saw in the last game for the Foxes. And I'm going to finish with a home win and a 2-0 one at the King Power Stadium. So with that out of the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for in this weekend's action. The only team I've got to score more than 2 are the tabletop is Coventry. I've gone for them to beat Blackburn 3-1. 2 Championship's favourite scorelines, including between the new managers between Sheffield United and Watford. And then maybe rather foolishly, given what we've seen so far this season, only 2 away wins and possibly surprising ones. Millwall away at QPR and Bristol City coming back to haunt Liam Manning at Carrow Road. But those are just my predictions for Match Week 10. You agree or disagree? Let me know in the comment section down below and give us your predictions for this weekend's action. If you beat or match my overall score, you will get a shout out when we return on Sunday evening to look ahead to the big midweek fixture list with all 24 teams in action again. Between now and then, no, there's plenty more to come, including a big chat about Luton Town. Obviously, we had those manager specials you can find in the eye above. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, turn that notification bell on. If you want to pre-order FM26 now, get advanced access and 22% off. Check out the link in the description or the eye above. Big thanks for watching. We'll see you again at the weekend. And let's hope it's goals galore again.